Yo, Happy New Year, everybody. What's good? Hope everybody started off their new year with exactly how they wanted to start it off with. I put a post out yesterday saying if it's in church, if you're partying, if you're staying at the crib, as long as you're safe. So I hope everybody had definitely a great new year. We're going to kick it off right. Best practices, going to talk about a subject that's been in my DM and my inbox for a little bit now. So I was able to take some time over the last couple of days and really dig out some research about caffeine. And, you know, we always on here, we go with the science. We don't go with the bro science as you read in magazines and everything like that. So we get down to the real. So what we're going to start off with is we know caffeine has been around for a long time. Chinese literature goes back to 2700 BC. Talks about the effects of caffeine. That's the oldest I could find if there's any literature talking about caffeine and the effects. Chemically, it's one of the groups of compounds that's called a mild central nervous stimulant. So it's considered a drug. And the compound naturally derives as something that I did not know with over 60 different plant sources. So that's a lot of different sources. Some of those sources includes coffee beans, tea leaves, cacao seeds, and cola nut seeds. Caffeine, once again, acts as a stimulant on the central nervous system, and we'll get back to that. That's super important, that central nervous system. And it can counteract what we use it for, tiredness, and improves concentration and focus. In addition to coffee, because that's the first thing people think of when they think of caffeine and tea, it's also in cola beverages, energy drinks, which is something that we're going to talk about today as well, energy drinks, chocolate, and many of the prescriptions and non-prescription medicines, which is something else that I didn't know that were in so many, especially in like cold remedies and things like that. Caffeine also serves as a flavoring agent in baked goods, desserts, and puddings. And as the slightly bitter taste it has is a balance between the sweetness and sugar of those products. So basically, in other words, what we're saying about caffeine, unless you know exactly what you're putting in your mouth, chances are that you swallow caffeine probably daily if you don't really know about it. So let's get right into the studies of what I found. So a study in 2019 found that university students averaged about, the mean intake was about 173 milligrams per day of caffeine. That's the mean or the aggregate average that they had. This is considered a moderate caffeine intake. And also, according to some of the studies that I found, the moderate intake can promote a variety of health benefits, including a lower risk of certain cancers, brain conditions, and liver problems in a moderate amount. However, caffeine consumptions can also have some mitigated risk as well. And there are several that we're going to sit down and delve into tonight in our 30-minute session. So drinking too much can also lead to having adverse effects. So let's get into some of the benefits that I was able to see from a correlation of metadata, meaning more than one study, and about the stimulating effects and some of the health benefits. So a 2009 review of existing literature found that consuming a moderate amount can have protective properties against liver cancer. That was one study that's done. In the same year, another study that I found in review found that drinking 2 to 3 cups of coffee per day had links to reduced risk of death from several different types of causes. Some studies have associated caffeine consumption with positive effects on the brain. So that's super big. In 2013, a study published in the World Journal of Biological Physiology suggested that drinking 2-3 cups per day may reduce suicide risk in adults, and we'll get to that mental part of that as well. Most recent research in Nature journals found that the consuming caffeine may boost long-term memory. Other studies have also suggested that caffeine intake can protect against type 2 diabetes, Parkinson's disease, as well as cardiovascular disease and stroke. But when I went to Stephen A. Meredith, who's actually a postdoctor research fellow, when I was going online to EBSCOhost to look up some of these journal articles, I found an interesting quote that he said about many people forget that caffeine is a psychoactive substance. And we're going to say that again. It's a psychoactive substance. And that's due to its widespread consumption that people are cool with that. Caffeine crosses the blood-brain barrier to stimulate your CNS or your central nervous system. So let's remember that when we talk a little bit later about the adverse effects of caffeine. And I want to read a quote that he said that I found was very interesting that I'm pretty sure you guys will find out pretty interesting as well. It says, unlike most other psychoactive substances, caffeine use is socially acceptable. And the drug is widely used. In fact, caffeine is the most commonly used psychoactive substance in the world. Moreover, and this is still quoting him, moreover, the vast majority of caffeine consumers use the substance regularly without apparent harm. These factors likely contribute to the perspective that caffeine is a benign substance that everyone can use without suffering any negative consequences. But there was quite a bit of literature out here to talk about the adverse effects. So we've already went over the benefits. So let's talk a little bit more about the adverse effects. Some things I knew, some things I did not know, and I'll be happy to share everything that I found tonight. So, however, ingesting caffeine in high doses can lead to harmful effects. And we will say that a moderate amount is about 2 to 2.5 cups a day. Anything that they found over 2.5 cups is when we're going to start seeing the adverse effects. A 2015 study identified several unwanted side effects of consuming more than 3 to 400 milligrams of caffeine per day. And these are some of the adverse effects: a faster heartbeat, anxiety, agitation, restlessness, sleeping problems, and actually tremors was a study correlation that they found from metadata analysis that they did on several different types of coffee drinkers and the amount. These effects are also present when people were experiencing caffeine withdrawals and people, caffeine leaving their body after they don't have to take it. People who drink a lot of caffeine actually have an issue with withdrawing from it. And you see some of those same things, the speeded heart rate, the speeded heartbeat, the anxiety, the agitation, things like that. However, previous research found that even moderate amounts of caffeine can have adverse health effects as well. And I've listed some of the studies that I found that were a little bit more of the more important ones. In 2013, the results of a large prospective study suggested that consuming 300 milligrams of caffeine a day during pregnancy was actually an increase of having a baby with a lower birth rate. Another study of data meta-analysis of 17 different studies involved 233,670 participants, suggested that drinking 3 to 4 cups of coffee every day may increase the risk of heart attack in men, but not in women. So can't refute the data, but that's specifically in men, they found that 3 to 4 cups may have a slight increase on the risk of heart attack, but they did not find this in women. Another thing that I found is that more research was necessary to confirm that long-term caffeine consumption is safe and whether it provides benefits or increases the risk of health problems. And this is the most important thing that I found that I really want to highlight tonight. The effects of caffeine can vary so much per individual. This may explain the mixed outcomes of the research and the impact on caffeine of the body. For example, the same doctor that did this study advised that individuals with anxiety disorders are more susceptible to the anxiety increasing effects of caffeine. So someone who has anxiety who drinks coffee is going to use those proponents that are inside of that caffeine, and could increase their anxiety. And there were studies to show that as well. Caffeine can also metabolize at different rates from individuals for various reasons. For example, cigarette smokers, which I did not know this, cigarette smokers metabolize caffeine twice as fast as non-smokers, which I definitely did not know that as well. However, caffeine metabolism is slower among infants, pregnant women, and individuals with liver disease specifically. So in addition to some medications, slow caffeine metabolism, which may increase the risk of caffeine intoxication. The effects of caffeine also depend on individual genetic characteristics that they found, and others are lifestyle factors of how people are living. So some people may have difficulty sleeping or experience tremors or stress with relatively low caffeine intake. And it's useful to be aware of knowing, understanding these symptoms. So there's a variety of different things, from infants to pregnant women to people who drink coffee regularly, 3 to 4 cups. Their tolerance, all of those things are relative to their consumption and their intake. So the symptoms that they found and the reduced caffeine intake happens, and that also occurs with caffeine addiction and withdrawal, which goes into our next subject. So your individual reaction to caffeine will be influenced by several factors, including the amount that you consume in relation to your body weight, your age, your emotional and nervous state, and your individual tolerance or threshold. So I'll go over that again. Your individual reaction to caffeine specifically will be influenced by several factors, but most of the correlation to body weight, your age, your emotional state, your nervous state, and your individual tolerance or threshold for caffeine. So let's talk about what happens when caffeine enters your bloodstream. When it enters your blood, it increases your heart rate, it promotes secretion of stomach acids, speeds up urine production, dilates some blood vessels, and constricts others. So once again, what happens when as soon as you drink that caffeine, it goes into your bloodstream, it increases your heart rate, it promotes secretion of stomach acids, speeds up your urine production, and also dilates some blood vessels and constricts others. If you've experienced coffee nerves, was what they call, you'll know how caffeine can cause trembling, and I've seen that before in other people, depression, diarrhea, loss of appetite, nervousness, and chronic muscle tension. So the last one is something that I did not know, that there's an actual study and correlation data to put caffeine with chronic muscle tension. So as a coach, a lot of my athletes, they drink coffee, but I significantly reduce their amount of coffee that they drink, especially when they're in contest prep. But when they're drinking, over 2.5, and that's what we're saying that threshold is to move out of that moderate zone. But there's actually a link to, and studies done to, chronic muscle tension and caffeine. So if you're thinking that, you're always having issues, maybe cramping in the calf, cramping in the hamstring, cramping in the upper back, like your teres major area or your upper lats, that can actually be a caffeine sign that you're either taking too much caffeine, because of what happens is caffeine, we know, is a natural diuretic, and then it also causes you for less blood and more urine production, which can also increase your ability to start cramping and causing that muscle tension. So just check out how much caffeine you're really taking in, and remember that it's not just coffee. Caffeine is in a lot of the different things that we said at the very beginning. So it's very important to kind of check that out as well, as much coffee as you're drinking. So because caffeine also releases fatty acids into the bloodstream, which I did know, but I didn't know that endurance athletes believe in this ability to conserve glycogen. So I said, let me kind of dig into that, because I had heard that one before from studying, which the glycogen is just simply stored muscle fuel. So don't let that fool you. And it can be used as a tool for improving performance. So I pulled about 4 or 5 studies from EcoHost and went into the scholarly peer-reviewed journals. And managing the diuretic effects of drinking that much coffee is way more of a con than anything else. Hey, Toya, more of a con than anything else. So my thing here is that if you're going to kind of relate to you drinking coffee to performance, there's not really a lot of studies out there to agree with that. Most physiologists that I read, and I only read about 3 or 4, but most of them have an overwhelming kind of hands-down approach that this is more of a placebo effect, and their performance is more psychological than physiological. So my distance, because I have a couple of triathletes on the team, as well as a couple of marathon runners, quite a few marathon runners as well, that we talk about this, but still I reduce their caffeine intake because of the amount that they're running. Especially they need their joints highly lubricated with the amount of running that they're doing. So if you're drinking quite a bit of coffee, it's already a natural diuretic, and those fatty acids that are released in the stream for endurance athletes, we got to be very, very careful there, especially that it's a diuretic. And caffeine activates many of the same behavioral and neuropharmacological things and mechanisms activated as reinforcers. So that includes other drug abuse as well. And and let me read a quote that he actually said here. Where is it at? It says, and I quote, and like many other reinforcers, caffeine is associated with various positive subjective effects like increased well-being, sociability, and feelings of energy. For those reasons, a percentage of the population develops a caffeine disorder. So we know in the United States that, people wake up first thing in the morning, get a cup, some people 2 cups, and technically that's all you're supposed to be doing. But people don't also realize when they put creamers and sugars, how many calories are actually adding along with the coffee. So you got caffeine that's already in there. Now you're putting a decent amount of sugar in there, you're putting a decent amount of creamer in there, and now all of a sudden you're drinking 2 to 3 cups and wondering why you're not really losing weight. You're talking hundreds of calories at that point. Hundreds. So if you're dealing with hundreds of calories and you're just drinking coffee with creamer, with sugar, with whatever else you're putting in there, and you're drinking that 3 to 4 times a day, you're probably drinking an extra 700 to 800 calories from what you're adding up in there. And remember, if your resting metabolic rate is running around 2,000, we'll say, resting just being how many calories you were burning laid in bed all day, you've already got 1,000 already in the hole that you're doing by just drink. You know what I mean? You're really not getting any protein, carbs, bad carbs from the white sugar that you're getting in there, and really no proper fat that you're needed. So you got to be careful in what you're taking into there as well. Some people become physically dependent on caffeine. The absence or the reduction of coffee or energy drink consumption. And let's talk about energy drinks, because as a first sergeant in the military, I see so many people drinking energy drinks all day long. And I'm talking about 4 to 5 monsters, which we know for a fact is well over the 300 milligrams. Some of those drinks have 300 to 400 milligrams inside just one. So if you're thinking you're doing 3 to 4, you're literally corroding your stomach lining inside of your stomach, because remember that you're releasing fatty acids. So those fatty acids are being released every single time. And there has been several studies that have been out just 2019, 2018, check them out, about the correlation between energy drinks and health adverse effects. So you got to be very careful eating those drinking those energy drinks, especially in the mouth of the military. And we drink them all day long, and I see it. It makes me cringe. I can understand one, but I'm telling you, I've seen 3, 4, 5 energy drinks, throughout the day, which is killing your intestines, killing your stomach lining, all those things like that. And it can trigger a range of symptoms when you overuse caffeine. I got some of the big ones here is headaches, tiredness. So you're thinking that you are, getting that extra boost, it's that short burst of energy, but it's not true energy that your body's producing. Remember that it's a stimulus on your central nervous system. So you get headaches, tiredness, reduced energy and alertness, sleepiness, low mood, concentration problems, irritability. Those are like the 7 ones that I found kept repeating from all the studies that I had checked out. Dependence on caffeine can become so strong for some individuals that they're not even unable to reduce consumption, despite the knowledge of what we're talking about tonight. From the physical approach or the psychological approach, and problems that continue to be associated with this continued use. Remember, caffeine is a drug. I'll say it again. Caffeine is a drug, and it's a psychoactive drug that goes into your system, and so many things happen from there, from when it goes to your CNS, which is your central nervous system, to all those things that we had just talked about a few minutes ago, with the headaches, with the increased heart rate, with the release of the fatty acids. And that's from 1 to 2 cups. You don't really see those effects. Usually around that magic number of 2.5 cups. And let me be clear here that that's just an average coffee of how much caffeine is involved. But whenever we get over 250 to 300 milligrams, which is considered over moderate, you're starting to see all these. And there's been not too many long-term studies, but they're starting to come out now, 10 to 15 years study-wise, that are showing some of the effects, long-term effects of caffeine. So let's finish up here with a couple of more notes that I found that I'm pretty sure you'll be interested in. I do want to read some quotes that I found that I wanted to share with you guys. So let's talk about the risk of young people, because I hear, oh, let them, drink coffee, start at 14 or 15. I've definitely heard that as well. It's suggested that some doctors, your doctor needs to be discussing caffeine with you if you are a caffeine drinker, so they can talk about specific amounts. You need to talk about genetics. You need to talk about heredity. You need to talk about a lot of mitigating factors that you have. Do you have anxiety? Do you have things like that? Do you have panic attacks? Coffee does not help that at all. Caffeine does not help that at all. So that's something that you need to discuss with your primary care physician. So the doctor that wrote this study particularly warned about children and adolescents. He said the majority of pediatricians recommend that young people should avoid caffeine consumption at all, as researchers don't fully understand the effects of developing on the brain. So I do want to read a couple of quotes from this study. It says, notably, caffeine interferes with sleep, and sleep plays a critical role in learning. Some laboratory research suggests that caffeine interferes with sleep and learning among adolescent rodents, which in turn hinders normal neurological development and is noticeable into adulthood. The last quote that I'll read is, some psychologists are also concerned that a pattern of caffeine use or abuse among young people may lead to subsequent problematic drug and alcohol use. So the Food and Drug Administration suggests that people need to talk about their pediatrician before even ever introducing caffeine into a young person's diet. And we're talking about, basically 16 and below. Michael R. Taylor, the Deputy Commissioner of Food and Veterinary Medicine for the FDA, said, and I quote, "We're particularly concerned about children and adolescents and the responsibility the FDA and food industry has in protecting health and respect to social norms that suggest we shouldn't be marketing stimulants. Caffeine is a drug. It's a psychoactive stimulant, such as caffeine, to our children. So many food and drink products now contain added caffeine to enhance their stimulating effects. Things as simple as jelly beans, waffles, syrup, chewing gum, all have caffeine. So unless you realize what you're putting in your body, like literally turning over the label, which I become, definitely do that every time I even buy something now, you will be surprised at two things that you didn't even think was in there, which is sugar and caffeine. So caffeine, like I said, is in chewing gum and syrup and waffles, and what it's doing to your body, we've already listed those things as well. You're also got to realize that, doctors are telling kids and adolescents, do not take this in. Caffeine shouldn't be really ingested in the system. So parents, be aware of what you're giving your children. Please turn that label around and see that a lot of things that you're thinking that, hey, I'm not giving them soda. Hey, they don't drink coffee. There's a lot of caffeine being added in certain food groups. Like I said, simple things like jelly beans, syrup, and waffles that you would never think caffeine is in. It's in. So wrapping up, with the takeaways, and I'll turn it over for questions. Studies into effects have produced mixed results. But what we're saying is that there are more adverse effects to caffeine when it's taken over, 2 cups or 300 milligrams, than there are pros from it. So be very, very careful. While moderate consumption of caffeine is unlikely, like we said, to have harmful effects, most people don't do a moderate amount. And then also, too, reactions to being stimulant depend on highly individual factors such as genetics and accompanying lifestyle choices. So if you smoke and do coffee, you're getting the double whammy. If you have anxiety and you take a lot of caffeine, or panic attacks, you have a lot of caffeine, all of that's correlated because you're dealing with a psychoactive drug that is a stimulant. Now, realize that the drug in itself is cleared by the FDA. We drink it every day. No one says anything about it. We drink tea with caffeine in it. We drink coffee with caffeine in it. So there's not a lot of things that we're putting into our trigger saying this is a bad thing. But when you start getting that 300 milligram mark and up, past moderate, was what the science considers moderate, then you really, really have some adverse effects that we've listed before. And we're talking about reduced energy and alertness, sleepiness, mood swings, concentration problems, irritability, headaches, tiredness, and your body becomes dependent on it as it is a drug, and you're looking for that caffeine, every morning, to get your day started. And even when you don't have that for a week, you're literally going through caffeine withdrawals, and that's what's considered a drug. So just be mindful as much as you're consuming the psychoactive substance. Be very, very careful with it. It's even in your pre-workout. It's in quite a few different things now that they're using. They have caffeine pills. They have caffeine, like I said, specific energy drinks, monster energy drinks that are, actually plaguing the military with health problems. So you just have to understand that if you're taking the psychoactive drug, what you need to understand about it is the amount that you're taking. Are you giving it to your kids and not even, indirectly knowing it? Is it in their waffles? Is it in their gum? Is it in there some of the food that you're constantly eating? At the end of the day, when you're doing all these things and calculating all this caffeine up, you're probably taking in more caffeine than you realize, even if you don't drink coffee at all. So even if you don't drink tea with caffeine in it, you're not understanding what's ingested and what's going into your body really, really, really could have an adverse effect on your health and you not even know it. So what my encouraging thing is from here, flip the label over, look at what you're putting in your body. My rule is if you can't really pronounce it, don't buy it, because it has a lot of preservatives and things there like that. But if you have to do those things, know what you're ingesting in your body. There's nothing wrong. Google is super amazing. If you don't know what something is in a product, Google it. And then some of those things, dyes and colors and things and preservatives, are just simply things to make it a certain color, a red, or orange, yellow, that are actually chemicals in there that are food coloring chemicals just to make it a certain color or keep it a certain look for a certain amount of time. So you got to be smart on what's going in your body, and caffeine is no different. I hope this has been informative for you. My thing is on best practices is to bring the topics that you guys want, to talk about them from a scientific approach, to really look at, scholarly articles that I can bring to you guys. So we're not making rash or knee-jerk decisions in anything that we do when it concerns our health, just making knowledgeable decisions to go forward and live our, the healthiest life. So thanks again, once again, for joining. I'll stay for a couple of minutes for any questions that you guys have about caffeine. I really appreciate so many people are tuning in. Please spread the word. We'll have another one in 2 weeks. I'm not sure exactly what the topic will be yet. I'm sure you guys will let me know DM-wise what you're looking at getting into. Thank you guys for your continued support of Team Best Fit as we try to preach health and wellness as a way of a lifestyle. So thank you so much. I'll stay around for any questions that you have. If not, Happy New Year and see you in a couple of weeks. Peace. So good evening, everybody. I'm just going back up to the very top. Good evening for everybody. Hey, what's going on, Dwayne? What's going on, Mac? What's good, bro? Happy New Year to you. You were giving coffee in your baby bottle. Baby, that's kind of crazy. Wowzers. Well, they didn't know what they didn't know. Yes, ma'am, Miss Gayla. Caffeine is also in gum. Yes, sir, Wayne. We're going to keep that truth coming. Thanks for joining in. Thanks. I'm glad it was informational for everybody. Yes, there's caffeine in chocolate, Wayne. Yeah, absolutely. That is one of the things that is naturally found in the way they make chocolate as well. So chocolate has caffeine, and they put added caffeine in there to give that bitter to sweet taste. So yeah, caffeine is also in chocolate as well. Yes, caffeine is considered a drug. It's considered a stimulant, a psychoactive stimulant. So yes, it is considered a drug. That's why you actually go through withdrawal. And anything that goes into your central nervous system, yes, is considered a drug. But it's so common inside of coffee, teas, everything like that, they don't consider it a drug for normalcy and society's sake. But yes, it is actually considered a drug, psychoactive. Great question. So yes, it's considered a psychoactive drug, and like I said, what happens in the blood vessels and release of fatty acids inside of your stomach lining is why people's stomach lining gets depleted over time. When you are really looking at energy drinks and things like that, which is becoming an epidemic in the military. We're talking people with 3, 4, 5 monsters a day destroying their stomach lining, and that's why you see them with withdrawals, even down to mood swings. So people with who have panic attack issues or anxiety really struggle with drinking caffeine and trying to find that balance, because you're dealing with neurons and things like that that are firing and actually going into your endocrine system. So you got to be very careful there. Yes, ma'am. No problem with that question. Next series of effects of processed sugar. We did that, Wayne, already. We did it. So if you go back, and I need to start a YouTube channel before I get beat up behind it. I'll start a YouTube channel, and I will put the video up there about sugar. We actually delved into white sugar and refined sugar, and how that works, and what's it added to in the food choices that we have now. So if you go back to my page, I want to say it was maybe 6 weeks ago, or at least. But anyways, what I'll do is I'll work on the next week or so, putting everything on YouTube, so we can just have a channel, so best practices, and we'll have all the topics listed. Question: what can I replace caffeine with to get more energy in the morning? Great question. So I always tell people, look at sleep. It's going to be the best thing. But if you're really having energy issues in the morning, there are a couple of things that I'll actually email you that could work for you. So let me write that down, Gayla. That you want me to get back to you on that you can actually utilize for the energy, because it depends on how is it because are you waking up tired, are you going to bed tired, and there could be a lot of different things with food. I know beet juice gives you a lot of energy in the morning. There's certain fruits that give you a lot of energy, in the morning naturally, because it's a natural sugar that they have in them that, will stimulate your glycogen and start, producing that energy. But it takes a while, honestly, to get that caffeine out of your system to where those withdrawals go. And we're talking about a couple of weeks where you're really feeling the remnants of that psychoactive drug releasing from your system. So I got a note down here to send you a couple of things on what can be replaced with. Keep the questions coming. So I got some action items. You guys have been wonderful. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I will ensure that I get the questions answered in the DM. I'll just shoot you guys a DM or text you if you ask specific questions. Just keep it going. At the end of the day, we're all on this health journey together, and the more information, the better for everybody. Continue to keep crushing it out there with your goals. Happy New Year to everyone. And on Team Best, as you know, we believe for our goals and we believe for what I want. So everybody in 2020, work for it, because it ain't going to come by itself. Have a good night. Peace.